Welcome to my review of the third episode of The Last of Us. This was an incredibly beautiful episode. It's definitely my favorite episode so far. I am so glad they did a gay romance and it was done well. I was not expecting it. And since I played the game, and in it, Frank is already dead and Bill is just a bitter, grumpy man. Also, Frank got bitten and hung himself and left Bill a hateful note. So I love that they changed this aspect for the show. I think having them die together is probably a better outcome than if they had Frank die and Bill still left around and being sad. But I am very sad too that we won't get to spend more time with Bill because I was expecting him to help out Joel and Ellie. He was such a great character to follow. Both actors did such a phenomenal job in this episode, especially Bill, but Frank as well. Their expressions and everything, the subtleties, their body language was, just perfect. I wasn't a huge fan of the opening scenes with Joel and Ellie this episode. I just didn't find them as engaging as usual, but once Bill showed up, my attention was immediately drawn. Just his presence on screen and the way they introduced his character with him building his apocalypse den, lively music playing in the background. Obviously, he's a very capable and knowledgeable person. I'd be so clueless about how to do any of this stuff in an apocalypse, so hats off to Bill. I love that they made Bill the typical conservative American as well, but he's just gay. And I loved how they had these two quite macho guys being vulnerable and intimate with each other, and in a very adult and healthy type of way. It's just so rare to see this on screen, especially in something like more mainstream like The Last of Us. So I just loved everything about it. And it's just something so relatable about their relationship to any kind of couple. And there was a real humanizing aspect to Bill, the way that he was played by Nick Offerman. For example, even though he's so outwardly calm and he's the get things done kind of person, there was a lot of vulnerability and emotion under the surface, just in his expressions and the way he held himself. When Frank shows up with his cheerful personality, I just love the smile that Frank gave Bill when Bill served him his food, and Bill is just so hilarious with his wary and uncertain glances. There was one moment that I thought was slightly out of character for Bill when he's playing the piano and Frank is standing behind him, just because Bill has been established as such a wary and careful character up until now. Suddenly he drops his guard in this one instance. If Frank had malicious intent, he could very easily have killed Bill from behind and taken over his house and all his possessions. Unless perhaps Bill was just overwhelmed and it's been so long since he's felt the beginnings of a human connection that he just totally forgot to be careful. That one instance I felt was a little out of character for Bill, or at least the way he was established in the episode. Their arguments and sweet moments were so realistic for a couple, gay or otherwise. I'm just so grateful for LGBTQIA plus characters who are more than just their sexuality. And I think the top moments for me were when Frank wants friends and invites Tess and Joel over, and also when Frank grows strawberries and shows Bill as a surprise, and Bill is all giggly and giddy with laughter when he has his first taste of the strawberry. It was just such a very touching moment and a reminder that in this world, this zombie apocalypse world, you don't get a lot of luxuries like food and fruit that we eat quite often today, and so easily just go to the supermarket and buy it. So the joy of it was a good reminder. And them growing old together, then Frank having a terminal illness and Bill looking after him was so sad and heartbreaking, but incredibly touching as well. It's not something you'd expect in a show like this, and that's just why I also loved this episode so much, and by extension also the series as well as the games, just for its focus on the humanity and the human connections and all that. In terms of Joel and Ellie, I wasn't a huge fan of their initial scenes. I just found them and their banter not as engaging as usual. Joel's still getting over the death of Tess, so he's just being broody and sad and silent as usual, while Ellie is being her usual slightly obnoxious and bratty self and doling out her sassy comments every now and then. I didn't like when she went to explore the basement herself. I mean, I understand that she's a curious kid and they're trying to establish her as an explorer and brave, that type of character, but it just felt a bit foolish and not a smart thing for a character to do. Though I did find it interesting when she found the infected in the basement and she cut it first before killing it. She seems a lot darker than I remember from the games. In the games, she felt more like a survivor who does what needs to be done. But this Ellie seems more cold and dark. Though it was cute when she was putting on her seatbelt and she said, "So cool," because what kids say is so cool to putting on their seatbelt. But yeah, I'm finding her characterization a little different from the game. I'm not sure if I like it, but yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on how you feel about Ellie. And they also finally confirmed that the infection did spread so quickly through flour or sugar or some other main ingredient, but I'm still not completely sold on that. Like, the world would have had to receive the same food at the same time, and it just seems unlikely if you have to ship the product to different countries, and some countries would also have different suppliers. So it's just a little hard to buy that this thing broke out all at once or all on the same day. It's a little too coordinated that it could bring down the world all at the same time. But I'm no expert on logistics or shipping or any of those things, so who knows, maybe it can happen in reality. But all in all, I loved this episode. Finally, a queer love story in a mainstream show, and where the characters are compelling, well-rounded, and especially aren't defined by their sexuality. And I do understand that it has the feeling of the bury your gays trope, where they kill off gay characters willy-nilly, and usually I'm one of the first to complain about those sorts of issues, but I think in this particular case for this series it works well, since Bill only helped Joel and Ellie out for a short time anyway, and at least they improved upon Bill and Frank's story, so I am quite happy with it. And let me know what you thought in the comments below, and like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.